A simple woman has her life turned upside down after accepting to pretend to be a nobleman's wife. Without understanding everything, she enters a marriage marked by secrets and haste. But upon discovering the truth behind the agreement, everything changes between them, and what was just a charade begins to become something real. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. That Thursday began like any other in the life of Marina Costa. Alarm clock at 5, thin coffee, bread with margarine. At 32 years old, a cook in a restaurant in Itambibi, she crossed São Paulo on 2 crowded buses to get to work. Her salary barely paid the bills, but she never complained. She had learned from her mother, who had died 3 years ago, that dignity lay in doing the best with what one had. At the corner market, while she was buying ingredients, a man in an impeccable suit entered, visibly shaken. Tall, around 40 years old, hair with strands of grey, desperate eyes. Everything about him screamed power and money, but he seemed like just a man in a panic. He approached her. "Please, I need your help. I know it will sound absurd, but I need you to be my wife now, today." Marina felt the world spin. "Are you all right, sir?" "I know how it sounds, but I have urgent reasons. I need to present a wife this afternoon. I will compensate you. Money, security. I just need you to pretend for a few hours." "I don't know you. I don't even know your name." "Eduardo. Eduardo Almeida Verissimo. And you?" "Marina Costa, but this is madness." "It is when you are desperate," Eduardo said with truth in his voice. "I won't hurt you. I just need help today." Marina looked at that rich man begging, then at her own calloused hands, her worn uniform. A spark of possibility ignited inside her. "If I accept, you respect me. You don't try anything. Afterward, each goes their own way. Word of honor." "Then I accept." Less than an hour later, she was in a luxury car heading to a registry office. Everything happened fast. A cold ceremony, 2 witnesses, a bored judge. Marina signed papers she barely read, her heart racing. Married to a stranger. In the car, Eduardo explained little. He needed to appear married to lawyers and family, urgent estate matters. At the office on Faria Lima, the meeting was tense. Men in suits, a severe woman looking at Marina like an intruder. Eduardo presented Marina as his wife, showed the certificate. Murmurs, distrust, but he held firm, protecting her. At night, when they left, Eduardo breathed a sigh of relief. It worked. "And now?" Marina asked. "I'll take you home, my home, because legally you are my wife. People will expect you to live with me." Marina felt panic. "You said it was only for today." And it was. But now it's complicated. They will investigate. If you disappear tomorrow, it will destroy everything. I will give you your own room, privacy. Tomorrow we will talk. Just one more day, please." She wanted to scream, but she knew she had gone too far. "All right, but tomorrow you explain everything." The mansion in Jardim Europa took her breath away. An immense garden, an imposing house. Inside, marble floors, a gigantic chandelier, everything large and luxurious. Donna Benedita, the housekeeper, looked at Marina with contained surprise. "This is Marina, my wife," Eduardo said. "She needs a room." "It is already prepared, sir. Mrs. Verissimo called to say you would be arriving with company." "Is my mother here?" "In the living room, waiting." Marina felt the floor disappear, meeting his mother now, like this. In the room, an elegant woman with pinned-up blonde hair was waiting. When she looked at Marina, her gaze was icy. "Mother, this is Marina, my wife. We got married today." The woman did not move. "I heard. You married a complete stranger without telling anyone. You just showed up married." "It was a decision I needed to make," Eduardo replied firmly. "A stupid decision." She approached Marina. "Where did you come from, girl?" "From the East Zone, ma'am. I work as a cook." The silence was deafening. "A cook," she repeated as an insult. "You, Eduardo Almeida Verissimo, heir to one of the most traditional families in São Paulo." "Yes, mother. I married Marina, and she is my wife, whether you like it or not." The mother looked at Marina with contempt. "We shall see how long this lasts." And she left, leaving a heavy silence. "I'm sorry," Eduardo said, exhausted. "She is difficult. She hates me, and she doesn't even know me. We will deal with this together." That night, lying in an immense room, a bed softer than anything she had ever experienced. Marina looked at the ceiling, questioning what madness she had gotten herself into. Married to a rich stranger in a mansion, hated by her mother-in-law before exchanging 2 words. But a part of her, deep down, was curious to see what would come next. The morning arrived disorienting. Marina woke up not knowing where she was. It took seconds to remember. She explored the room, a closet larger than her apartment, a marble bathroom, everything refined and expensive. Through the window, she saw the impeccable garden, the pool shining. Donna Benedita knocked, bringing coffee. Mr. Eduardo left early. Urgent commitments he couldn't postpone. He asked me to take care of you. Did he say when he'll be back? A few days. A few days. Marina felt anger. He brought her here, caused a scandal, and left without explanation. She spent the days exploring the house, talking to Marcos, the kind butler who told her about Eduardo's grandmother, a woman of simple origins who had won over the family. Donna Lourdes, the cook, received her with affection, but Julia was an oppressive presence. She appeared daily, making loud comments about changes in the house, Eduardo's hasty decisions. Marina tried to ignore it, but every word pierced her confidence. On the 3rd day, Julia entered the kitchen, accompanied by a young, arrogant blonde man. "Marina, this is Ricardo, Eduardo's cousin. He wanted to meet the new member of the family." Ricardo looked her up and down. "So you are the famous surprise wife. You caused quite a stir, a cook from the East Zone. Who would have thought Eduardo had this adventurous side?" The tone was offensive. "Pleasure," Marina said coldly. "It must be very different being here, no? So far from your natural environment." Donna Lourdes intervened. "Excuse me, Mr. Ricardo, Mrs. Marina and I were talking about dinner." Ricardo left laughing, but Marina heard him talking about her in the hallway with Julia. "Don't mind them," Donna Lourdes said. "They are bitter people. You seem like a good girl." But Ricardo's words echoed, so far from her natural environment, as if she were an animal taken from its habitat. Maybe that was exactly it. Maybe she didn't belong in that place. Alone in the immense room, she thought about calling friends, but she felt ashamed for letting herself be carried away, for believing that this would work out. On the 4th day, Donna Benedita announced, "Mr. Eduardo returns this afternoon. He asked for you to be home. You need to talk." Marina spent the day anxious. When she finally heard the car, she went down with her heart beating fast. Eduardo entered carrying a briefcase, looking tired. When he saw her, he stopped. "Marina, we need to talk now." In the office, Eduardo pointed to an armchair and sat behind the desk, running his hands over his face. "I owe you an apology for showing up like that, for putting you in this situation, for disappearing. It was all unfair. It was. You left me here alone, having to put up with your mother and your cousin treating me like trash. You owe me more than an apology. You owe me the truth." Eduardo took a deep breath. "You're right. I'll tell you everything." He poured himself a whiskey. "My grandfather built an empire. Hotels, developers, investments. When he died, he left a will with a specific clause. I would inherit the presidency and shares, but I needed to be married before I turned 40. Otherwise, it would be redistributed. Does that even exist? It exists when you're rich and controlling. He thought a married man would be more responsible. Nonsense, but it was legally established. And you turned 40. Last week. I had until that day to get married, or I would lose everything. I tried for years to find someone, but it never worked out. Time passed, and there I was, in the last week, without options. And you saw me at the market. It wasn't the first time. I ate at that restaurant every now and then. I saw you several times in the kitchen, always focused, working hard. You caught my attention. In that desperate moment, you were the first person I thought of. Someone I thought I could trust. You still used me. You put me in this without telling me the truth. I know, I'm sorry. But now I'm telling you everything. I'm going to make you a new, honest proposal. I need you to stay as my wife for 1 year. Enough time to consolidate my position, ward off legal questioning. You will have everything you need: housing, food, money. You can take courses, invest in yourself. When it's over, if you want to leave, you leave with an amount that will guarantee your future." Marina listened in silence, her heart racing. 1 year in that strange world, but with a chance to change her life completely. And if I say no? I will respect it. I will help you financially regardless, but it will complicate things a lot for me. I might lose everything, but the choice is yours, Marina. Marina looked at that vulnerable man asking for help. It was a transaction, yes, but one where both won. All right, 1 year, but with clear rules. Total respect, privacy when I need it, treat me like a person, and protect me from your family because I can't stand being treated like trash anymore. Our house, Eduardo corrected, and yes to everything, I promise. They shook hands. The touch was firm and warm. Let's make this work, she said. Let's, he agreed. And in that moment, without them noticing, something changed. It was no longer just a desperate agreement, it was a pact, a partnership, and perhaps the beginning of something neither of them expected. The days following the conversation were about adaptation. Eduardo kept his word, treating Marina with respect. He hired a stylist to put together a suitable wardrobe, an etiquette teacher whom Marina initially refused but eventually accepted, realizing she needed to know the codes of that world to survive. Julia remained icy, but Eduardo began to confront her more. At a family lunch, when Julia commented that Marina must be lost in conversations about art and culture, Eduardo replied that Marina had as much to contribute as anyone, perhaps more, since she had lived real experiences. The silence was awkward, but Marina felt gratitude. Ricardo was a constant problem. He appeared frequently, always observing, asking seemingly innocent questions about how they met, about the speed of the marriage. Eduardo warned that Ricardo was the most interested in seeing the marriage fail, being next in the line of succession. The first big test came 2 weeks later, an important charity dinner gathering the business elite. The first time Marina would be officially presented as Mrs. Verissimo. Marina was terrified. An elegant navy blue dress, hair in soft waves, light makeup. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like another person, but she still felt like herself inside. Eduardo appeared impeccable in a tuxedo, standing still looking at her. You are beautiful, but more importantly, are you ready? Ready to be judged by 300 rich people? I'll never be ready. Eduardo approached. Look at me, Marina. You are worth more than anyone who will be there. You worked hard your whole life, fought for every achievement. These people, most inherited everything. Keep your head high, be yourself. I will be by your side. His words strengthened her. Let's do this. The dinner was as difficult as she imagined, but also surprising. A stunning hall, people in very expensive clothes. When they entered, there was a noticeable silence, everyone looking. Marina felt her legs go weak, but Eduardo held her hand firmly. Endless introductions. Marina felt judgment in every look, every forced smile. Women looked her up and down, whispered. But there were positive surprises. A businesswoman shook her hand, saying she admired women who came from the bottom. A young businessman asked genuine questions about cooking. During dinner, Ricardo was at the table observing every interaction. So, Marina, how was the transition from cook to the family's first lady? It must have been dramatic. The tone was provocative. It was big, yes, but I discovered that people are people everywhere. Some kind, others mean. Money doesn't change that. Low laughter around. Ricardo smiled sharply. How profound. But do you think you'll be able to adapt? It's so different from where you came from. Ricardo, enough, Eduardo said tensely. No, it's all right. Marina looked straight at Ricardo. I don't know if I'll adapt completely, and maybe I don't want to, because where I come from, people work honestly. They don't try to pull others down to climb up. Maybe the challenge is for this world to adapt to me. Absolute silence. Julia looked with an indecipherable expression. Ricardo was speechless. Eduardo looked at Marina with admiration. The rest passed in a blur. They danced and Marina stepped on his foot twice, but Eduardo laughed genuinely, guiding her with patience. You were incredible today, Eduardo said softly while dancing. The way you talked back to Ricardo, I've never seen anyone shut him up like that. I just told the truth. The truth is usually powerful. Being so close to him, feeling his firm hand on her back, his scent, was affecting her in an unexpected way. When they returned home, there was something different between them. A new proximity, an understanding that didn't exist before. Eduardo walked Marina to her room as always, but he hesitated before saying goodbye. Thank you for being there with me, for being you. You're welcome. They stood still looking at each other. Marina felt that if she moved a few inches closer, something would happen. But she didn't. And neither did he. Not yet. Good night, Marina. Good night, she went in with her heart racing. Social events became frequent. Lunches, openings, dinners. Each time Marina became more comfortable, learning to navigate that world. And each time, the connection with Eduardo deepened. Small gestures gained meaning. The way he touched her back while guiding her. The way she adjusted his tie. The complicit smile they exchanged when someone made a ridiculous comment. At home, their coexistence changed. They dined together, talking about everything. Eduardo told her about business pressure, the difficulties of leading a huge company where half were trying to bring you down. Marina talked about her childhood, about her mother, about dreams abandoned for lack of money. One night, after a pleasant dinner where they laughed a lot, they stayed in the living room talking until late. Marina on the sofa, barefoot, legs tucked. Eduardo in the armchair, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He seemed so different from the serious businessman. He seemed real. "Can I ask a personal question?" Marina said. "Of course." "Why did you never get married before, really? You are handsome, rich, intelligent." Eduardo sat in silence, thinking. "I never found someone who made me forget everything. I always had responsibilities, pressure. The women I met were interested in money or wanted to change me. There was never a real connection. I never felt seen, you know? Always Eduardo Verissimo, the heir. Never just Eduardo." Marina understood perfectly. "I know, I was always Marina, the poor girl, the cook. Never just Marina." They looked at each other with so much understanding that Marina felt a lump in her throat. "But now, how do you feel now?" Eduardo stood up, sat beside her, not very close, but close enough. "Now, for the first time in a long time, I feel seen, understood, thanks to you." Marina's heart beat so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Eduardo, I know this wasn't part of the agreement, that we were supposed to keep our distance, but it's getting hard, Marina. Every day it gets harder to pretend that this is just acting." Marina took a deep breath. "We have an agreement, 1 year, then I am free. I know I will respect it, but I can't pretend I don't feel anything." They stayed there, so close, tension growing. Marina wanted to move closer, close the distance, but she was afraid of getting hurt, afraid of it being temporary, an illusion. Say Eduardo must have noticed because he stood up, placing a safe distance. "Sorry, I didn't want to pressure you. I just wanted you to know the truth. What you do with that truth is your choice." And he left, leaving Marina with a whirlwind of emotions. Lying down later, she kept looking at the ceiling, reliving every moment, every word. She was falling in love. As much as she tried to deny it, as scary as it was, she was falling in love with Eduardo. And by the way he looked at her, by the things he said, he felt the same. The question was, what would they do with it? How would they navigate that feeling in the midst of an agreement with a deadline? And when the year ended, would they be able to separate? Or was it already too late? Marina had no answers. All she knew was that her life had changed completely, and she along with it. The woman who had accepted that agreement at the market no longer existed. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, but also more vulnerable. Because now she had something to lose. She had someone to lose, and that was both exciting and terrifying. The following days were filled with a different tension, an acute awareness of each other's presence. Every accidental touch gained weight. Every look lasted seconds longer. Marina caught herself thinking about him at random moments, remembering how he smiled when she made a joke, the seriousness with which he listened to her stories, the kindness even when no one was looking. The whole house seemed to feel that something was happening between the master and the mistress, even if neither admitted it. Ricardo, however, was not convinced. His visits became more frequent, always with excuses. One afternoon he appeared unannounced with documents. Marina was reading when he entered. Marina, always alone. Where is the devoted husband? Working, some of us do that. Ricardo laughed unpleasantly. Funny, but tell me, in such a sudden marriage, did you already have intimacy before? Or was everything really that fast? It's none of your business. Ah, but it is. Because if this marriage is a farce, a scheme for Eduardo to keep his inheritance, it concerns me. Very much. Are you calling my marriage a farce? I'm saying it's suspicious. No one gets married like that without a history together, unless there are other motives. Before Marina could respond, Eduardo entered furiously. He must have heard from the hallway. Ricardo, get out of my house, now! Eduardo, I said now. And if you ever again insinuate anything about my marriage or my wife, you will regret it. Is that clear? Ricardo looked from one to the other, decided it wasn't worth persisting. Fine, but this isn't over, cousin. And he left. Eduardo went to Marina, touching her face gently. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? No, he just tried to provoke me. He's looking for anything to use against us. I'm sure he hired investigators. We need to be more careful. Careful how? We need to demonstrate more affection in public. Make it look more real. If someone is watching, they need to believe completely that we are a real couple. Marina swallowed. Demonstrating more affection meant touching more, staying closer, maybe kissing when necessary. Considering what she felt, it was gasoline on an out-of-control fire. But he was right. All right, let's do what is necessary. And in that moment, both knew they were about to cross a line that would change everything between them. Because pretending affection when real feelings already exist is playing with fire. And they were about to discover that some flames, once lit, can no longer be extinguished. The opportunity came faster than they expected. On the weekend, a birthday party for an important businessman who was Eduardo's partner at an exclusive club where half of São Paulo would be. The kind of occasion where everyone observed everyone, where gossip was born and reputations were destroyed. Marina wore an elegant red dress that highlighted her curves, making her feel beautiful and powerful. When she went down and saw Eduardo's reaction, she knew she had chosen right. He stood still, looking as if he had forgotten to breathe. You are perfect, he said when he found his voice. Thank you. Marina felt heat in her cheeks. In the car, Eduardo held her hand. Remember what we talked about. Today we need to be convincing. I will need to touch you. Stay close. Is everything all right? Marina looked at their intertwined hands, feeling a wave of heat. Everything is all right. The party was typical. Beautiful, rich and bored people, drinking expensive champagne and judging one another. But Eduardo didn't leave her alone for a second. He kept his hand on her back, pulled her close when they talked, presented her with visible pride. And Marina reciprocated, touching his arm when she laughed, leaning against him, looking at him in a way that wasn't hard to fake because it was genuine. Ricardo was there with a different woman. He watched like a hawk. And Marina realized it wasn't just Ricardo. There were other people paying attention, some with curiosity, others with envy or disapproval. Eduardo was right. They needed to be convincing. When the band started playing and couples went to dance, Eduardo looked at Marina with a silent question. She nodded, and he led her to the floor, pulling her close in a much more intimate position than the first time. This time there was no space between them. Her body pressed against his firm hand on her back, his face so close she felt his breath. Is everything all right? Eduardo asked softly. Yes, are we being convincing? Eduardo looked with an intensity that made her forget they were at a party full of people. Very, maybe too convincing. They danced in silence, and Marina allowed herself just to feel the heat of his body, the strength of his arms, the familiar scent. If she closed her eyes, she could pretend it was real, that it wasn't a performance, that Eduardo really wanted her, that she had the right to be there in his arms. When the music ended, they stood still looking at each other. Then Eduardo did something unexpected. He leaned in and kissed her forehead, a gentle but intimate gesture that made Marina close her eyes and hold her breath. When she opened them again, she saw Ricardo watching, frustrated. The message was clear. They had been convincing. But the kiss, even being on the forehead, had awakened something in Marina. The touch of his lips on her skin, however chaste, had set her on fire. And by the way Eduardo still held her, by his eyes when they looked at her, he had felt the same. They returned late, both in silence. When they arrived, Eduardo accompanied Marina to her room, but this time when she turned to say goodnight, he held her hand. Marina, we need to talk about this, about what is happening between us. I know, because it's no longer pretending for me. I don't know if it ever was, and pretending that it is will drive me crazy. For me, it's not pretending either. It hasn't been for some time." The relief on Eduardo's face was palpable. He took a step closer, lifting his hand to touch her face. "So what do we do? How do we deal with this?" "I don't know. Everything is so complicated. We are so different. And there's the agreement, there's your family, there's everything." "I know. But I can't stay near you and pretend indifference anymore. I can't touch you and act like it means nothing anymore." Marina felt her eyes sting. "Eduardo." He leaned in, resting his forehead against hers, eyes closed. "Tell me what you want, Marina. That I'm not alone in this." "You're not. But I'm afraid. I'm afraid that it's temporary, that when the year ends you'll realize it was just the situation, the forced coexistence." Eduardo opened his eyes, looking directly at her. "Then let me tell you something I should have told you before. I didn't choose you randomly that day. I knew you, Marina. I had been eating at that restaurant for months just to see you working. You didn't notice me, always focused. And I became obsessed. By your strength, your authenticity. I tried to talk to you several times, but I never had the courage. And when the situation became desperate, you were the first person I thought of. Not because it was convenient, but because I had already felt something for you for a long time." Marina was breathless. He already knew her. He already had feelings before all this. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because it seemed crazy. Because I was afraid you'd think I was making it up. Because I didn't want you to think it was manipulation. But it's true, Marina. You weren't a random choice. You were the only one that made sense." Tears finally fell. Eduardo wiped them away with his thumbs, so gently that she felt her heart tighten. "I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to process that you already wanted me before even knowing me for real." "Then let me get to know you for real now. Not as part of an agreement, not as a performance, for real. Let's see where it leads us, without pressure, without expectations. Just the two of us." Marina looked at that man who had entered her life so chaotically and turned it upside down. A man from a completely different world, but who somehow managed to see her, to understand her. She made a decision. Even with fear, without guarantees, she was going to risk it. "All right, let's try, for real." Eduardo smiled, a smile so genuine, so full of relief and happiness that Marina couldn't resist. She moved closer and kissed him. It was a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but it quickly deepened. Eduardo's hands went to her waist, pulling her close, and Marina wrapped her arms around his neck, losing herself completely. It was better than she had imagined, more intense, more real. When they separated, both were breathless. Eduardo rested his forehead against hers, smiling. "I've been waiting for this for a long time." "Me too, even without knowing it." They spent a few more minutes there, just holding each other, feeling the proximity. When they separated, there was a new understanding. They had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The original agreement no longer mattered. What mattered was what they felt, what they were building together. "Good night, Marina," Eduardo said, kissing her forehead once more. "Good night," she replied, watching him go with a smile on her lips. Lying down, Marina touched her own lips, still tasting the kiss. Her life had changed completely, from a cook in the East Zone to the wife of a rich businessman, from a lonely woman to someone falling in love for real. It was scary, exciting, all at the same time. And for the first time since it all began, she felt that maybe, just maybe, it made sense. That maybe it wasn't madness, but destiny. That maybe two people from such different worlds could really find each other and build something true together. The days following the first kiss were like living in a bubble. Marina and Eduardo no longer hid what they felt, at least when alone. Dinners became intimate moments, talking for hours, discovering details they hadn't had time to explore before. Eduardo talked about the pressure of carrying a family legacy, about the loneliness even while surrounded by people. Marina talked about her mother, about dreams of being a chef that she abandoned when she just needed to survive. In public, they remained careful, but now the touches had a different meaning. It wasn't a performance, it was a necessity. Eduardo's hand on her back wasn't for appearances, it was because he needed to touch her. The smile she gave wasn't forced. It was genuine, born from a real feeling that grew every day. Donna Benedita and Marcos noticed the change and were visibly happy. Donna Lourdes hugged Marina in the kitchen one day, saying she had never seen the master so light, so happy. "You did him good, girl. You made him remember that life exists beyond work." But not everything was roses. Julia continued to be a problem. One afternoon she confronted Marina in the library. "You think you won, don't you? You think you conquered my son, that now you are part of this family." Marina, who was no longer the insecure woman of months ago, looked at her without fear. "I don't think I won anything, Donna Julia. I'm just trying to be happy, and make your son happy too." "Happiness? My son has responsibilities. He cannot afford to think only of happiness. He needs a wife who understands his world, who knows how to behave in society, who brings advantages to the family." "And I don't? Because from what I've noticed since I arrived, Eduardo is more focused, happier, more present. Business is going well. People comment positively about him. Maybe what he needed wasn't someone else from your world, but someone who made him remember that there is something beyond it." Julia turned red with anger. "You are bold, you always were. Do you think because my son became enchanted with you, it changes who you are? You are still a girl from the East Zone, without education, without class, without anything that qualifies you to be here." The words hurt more than Marina wanted to admit. But before she could respond, Eduardo entered like a storm. "Mother, enough! I've already warned you several times to stop. Marina is my wife, whether you like it or not. And if you can't respect her, maybe it's better you don't come here anymore." Julia looked shocked. "Are you kicking me out of your house because of her?" "I'm asking you to respect my wife in our house. And if you can't, then yes, I prefer you don't come." A heavy silence. Julia looked from Eduardo to Marina, and for the first time Marina saw something that could be hurt. "Very well, if that is what you want." And she left with her dignity intact, but visibly shaken. Eduardo went to Marina. "Are you all right? She went too far." "I am, but you didn't have to. She is your mother, and you are my wife. I won't let anyone, even my mother, disrespect you. You don't deserve that." Marina felt her eyes sting. "Thank you for defending me." Eduardo pulled her into a hug, and Marina relaxed there, feeling the security of his arms. "Always, I will always defend you." And in that hug, Marina knew she had found not just a love, but a partner, someone who would be by her side facing any storm. And that was worth more than any wealth, any mansion, any life of luxury. Because the true luxury was being loved, being seen, being defended. And finally, after a lifetime of fighting alone, Marina had someone fighting by her side. And that changed everything. But the problems with Julia were small compared to what Ricardo was preparing. A week after the confrontation in the library, Eduardo received an urgent call from his lawyer. An action was being filed questioning the validity of the marriage, with accusations of fraud and a marriage of convenience for inheritance purposes. Ricardo had hired investigators who gathered information about how they met, about the speed, about the lack of a documented history. Eduardo turned pale as he hung up. "He is really trying to destroy everything." "What do we do?" Marina asked, feeling panic. "We fight. We have to prove our marriage is real, that it wasn't a scheme. They're going to investigate everything, Marina. They will want testimonies, proof of intimacy, evidence that we really live as a couple." "And can we prove that?" Eduardo looked with an intensity that made her blush. "We can, because now it's the truth, but it means opening up our lives, our privacy. They will want to know intimate details, investigate every aspect of our relationship." "Then let them investigate. We have nothing to hide, not anymore." The decision to fight further strengthened their bond. They spent days preparing documentation, gathering proof, talking to lawyers. And in the process, they became even closer. Nights working together in the office ended with kisses that were increasingly intense, more urgent. The sexual tension was palpable, but Marina still didn't feel ready for the next step. She was afraid it was happening too fast, that they were letting themselves be carried away by the situation. Eduardo respected her limits, but she saw the difficulty. One night, after a particularly intense kiss, he pulled away, breathing heavily. "Marina, I need you to know I'm trying to be patient, but it's getting hard. I want you in a way I've never wanted anyone. and knowing you're there, so close but so far. I know, I feel the same. But I need time, Eduardo. I need to be sure it's real, that it won't disappear when the novelty passes. It won't. This isn't a novelty, Marina. It's the most real thing I've ever felt. The hearing was set. Marina was terrified. What if they couldn't convince them? What if they lost everything? The night before, Marina was in her room putting away clothes when Eduardo knocked. "Can I come in?" Of course. Eduardo entered looking as nervous as she was. "I came to see if you're all right. Tomorrow is going to be hard." "I'm nervous and afraid. What if they don't believe us?" Eduardo held her hands between his. "They will believe us because it's the truth, and the truth always wins." Marina wanted to believe, but the fear was real. "Eduardo, if we lose everything, if you lose your inheritance because of me, then I will have lost it, and it won't be because of you. It will be because my grandfather created absurd rules and because my cousin is miserable, but not because of you. You only brought good things to my life." "Really?" "Really. You made me remember what it is to live for real, Marina. You made me feel things I thought I'd never feel. You made me want to be a better person. If I lose everything but have you, I'll still come out winning." His words broke Marina's last barrier of resistance. She moved closer, kissing him with all the intensity of the feelings she had been holding back. Eduardo responded in kind, deepening the kiss, hands running down her back. When they separated, both were breathless. "Stay with me tonight," Marina said impulsively. "I don't want to be alone, not today." Eduardo looked into her eyes, searching for certainty. "Are you sure?" "I am," she said, and it was true. She was ready to take that step, to give herself completely to what she felt. That night was everything Marina never knew she wanted. Eduardo was gentle, careful, but also passionate in a way that made her feel completely desired, completely loved. When she fell asleep in his arms, she felt complete in a way she had never experienced. The hearing the next day was tense. Ricardo was there with lawyers, presenting evidence of the speed of the marriage, the social differences, the suspicious circumstances. But Eduardo and Marina presented their own evidence. Photos together at events, testimonies from employees about the couple's dynamic, even messages showing real intimacy. And then Marina did something unexpected. She asked to speak directly to the judge. "I know how this looks. I know my marriage to Eduardo was fast, that we came from different worlds. But the truth is that what started as a complicated situation transformed into real love. Eduardo saw me when no one else did. He gave me a chance when no one else would. And I helped him remember that life exists beyond business and obligations. I'm not asking you to believe my word. I'm asking you to look at the facts. We are together, we live together, we built a life together. This is not fraud, it is real." The silence after the speech was absolute. The judge looked at Marina for a long moment, then at Eduardo, who looked at his wife with obvious pride and admiration. Then he looked at Ricardo, who seemed less confident. "I will analyze all the evidence and give my decision in a week." When they left, Marina was shaking. Eduardo pulled her into a tight hug. "You were incredible, so incredible. I just told the truth. I know, and it was perfect." The week of waiting was agony. But Marina and Eduardo spent it together, each day strengthening their bond. When the decision finally arrived, they were together in the office when the lawyer called. The action had been rejected. The judge found no evidence of fraud, considering the marriage legitimate and the questioning unfounded. Ricardo had lost. Eduardo hung up and pulled Marina into a celebratory kiss. We won, Marina." "We won," she repeated, feeling tears of relief. But the victory was only the beginning. The real challenge was starting, navigating a real marriage with real feelings in a world that still judged them. But for the first time, Marina felt they could face anything together, because what they had was real, authentic, true, and nothing and no one could take that from them. The months following the victory were filled with a happiness Marina never imagined. She and Eduardo no longer hid what they felt. The relationship evolved into something deep, solid, built on mutual respect, admiration, and a love that grew every day. Marina enrolled in a gastronomy course at one of the best schools in São Paulo. Eduardo insisted, saying she should pursue her dreams, not just live in his shadow. She resisted at first, afraid people would think she was taking advantage. But he was irreducible. You have talent, Marina. You always had. Now you just have the resources to develop it as you deserve. The classes were challenging and exciting. Marina discovered she loved the creative part of cooking, experimenting with flavors, creating new dishes. Some classmates recognized her as Eduardo Verissimo's wife, and there were curious looks, but most treated her as just another student passionate about food. And that was liberating. At home, the dynamic changed completely. There were no more separate rooms. Marina had moved into Eduardo's room, and waking up every day beside him was a gift she never tired of appreciating. They made plans together, dreamed together, built a life that was theirs, unique and authentic. Donna Benedita, Marcos, and Donna Lourdes were like family now. They treated her with genuine affection, happy to see the house finally have life, laughter, love. "I've never seen the master so happy," Marcos commented one day. "You did him good, ma'am, and all of us." Even Julia had started to soften, though slowly. There were still moments of coldness, sharp comments, but they were not as frequent or cruel. One day, surprisingly, she appeared asking to speak with Marina alone. They sat in the living room, the same place where they first met. Julia seemed uncomfortable, fidgeting with her hands nervously. "I came to apologize." Marina's eyes widened, shocked. "What?" "For the comments, for the way I treated you. It wasn't fair. You didn't deserve it." "Why the change?" Julia took a deep breath. "Because I saw what you did for my son. I saw him transform, become lighter, happier, and I realized I was being selfish, too protectionist. Eduardo always had everything, but he never had this. He never had someone who looked at him the way you do, as if he were just Eduardo, not the heir, not the businessman. And that is precious. I love your son, Donna Julia, for real. Not for the money, not for the position, just for who he is. I know it took me time to accept it, but now I know, and I want to apologize for taking so long to see it." They talked for almost 2 hours, really talked for the first time. Julia talked about her own arranged marriage, about how she had learned to love her husband, but always felt something was missing. She talked about the fear of Eduardo making wrong choices, of getting hurt. Marina understood that much of Julia's coldness came from fear, not malice, and that helped her forgive. When Eduardo arrived and found the two of them having tea and talking civilly, he was so shocked he had to sit down. "Am I having hallucinations?" "Your mother and I are making peace," Marina explained. "Is this really real?" "It is, my son, and it's time. Marina makes you happy. And your happiness is what matters most, even if it took me a while to realize it." She kissed Eduardo's cheek, nodded to Marina with a half-smile, and left. "Did she apologize to you?" Eduardo asked, incredulous. "She did, and she was sincere." Eduardo pulled Marina into a tight hug. "You are incredible. You managed to do the impossible." "I didn't do anything. I was just myself." "Exactly," Eduardo replied, kissing her. And in that moment, Marina knew she had not just found love but gained a family. An imperfect, complicated family, but one that finally accepted her. And that was worth more than she had imagined. With Ricardo defeated, and Julia finally accepting the marriage, it seemed all obstacles had been overcome. But there was still an unresolved issue, the original agreement. The year Eduardo had asked for was coming to an end, and although both knew what they felt was real, the agreement still hung over them like a shadow. One night, exactly 1 year after the hurried marriage at the registry office, Eduardo took Marina to dinner at a sophisticated restaurant overlooking the city. Marina was beautiful in a dark blue dress, hair loose falling over her shoulders, a simple necklace Eduardo had given her as a gift. He was visibly nervous, and Marina didn't understand why. When they finished dessert, Eduardo held her hand across the table. "Marina, do you know what day it is today? Our wedding anniversary, 1 year." "Exactly, the term we established in our agreement, and now it has ended." Marina felt her heart tighten. "It has ended. And according to our agreement, you are now free to go if you want. With all the financial security I promised, without obligations, without ties." Marina looked at him, trying to understand where he was going. "And if I don't want to go?" Eduardo took a deep breath, and then, to Marina's absolute shock, he stood up and knelt beside her chair, taking a small velvet box from his pocket. "Then I want to ask you a question. A real question this time. not a desperate request in a market. Marina felt tears welling up as he opened the box, revealing a beautiful ring with a diamond that sparkled under the restaurant lights. "Marina Costa Verissimo, this last year was the best of my life. You transformed me. You made me a better person. You taught me what it is to love for real. I don't want you to stay with me because of an agreement. I don't want you to stay for financial security or convenience. I want you to stay because you want to, because you love me as much as I love you. So I ask you, will you marry me? For real this time. Not out of necessity, but out of love." Marina was crying openly, tears rolling down her face. Around them, other customers had stopped to watch, but she only had eyes for Eduardo, for the man who had entered her life so chaotically and transformed her completely. "Yes," she said, her voice coming out in an emotional whisper. "Yes, I will marry you, for real, for love, always for love." Eduardo placed the ring on her finger with trembling hands, then stood up, pulling her into a deep kiss. The entire restaurant applauded, but they barely noticed, lost in each other. When they separated, Eduardo had tears in his eyes too. "I love you so much it hurts sometimes. I love you too, more than I thought I could love someone." They married again, this time a real ceremony with friends and family. Julia was there, smiling genuinely, even crying during the vows. Donna Benedita, Marcos and Donna Lourdes in the front row, proud as if Marina were their daughter. Some of Marina's old friends from the East Zone came, a bit intimidated but happy for her. Eduardo invited only people who really mattered, not hundreds of superficial acquaintances, but true friends. When Marina walked down the church aisle, this time with a real wedding dress, she saw Eduardo waiting at the altar with an expression that made her want to cry with happiness. This was the man she loved, the man who had seen beyond appearances, who had given her a chance, who had fallen in love with the person she was, not with what she could pretend to be. The vows were written by them. Eduardo promised to always see her, always hear her, always put her happiness first. Marina promised to be his partner in everything, in the good and bad days, in wealth and in the poverty she knew so well. When the priest declared them husband and wife and they kissed, there were cheers and tears from everyone. The party was beautiful, but the most special moment was when Eduardo pulled her to a quieter corner and said, "Thank you." "Why?" "For saying yes on that crazy day at the market, for giving me a chance, for transforming desperation into love, for being you." "Thank you. For having seen me, for having seen beyond the cook's uniform, beyond the humble origin, for having seen Marina." Months later, Marina opened her own restaurant, a cozy place in Villa Maddalena, serving sophisticated home-cooked food, combining humble roots with techniques she had learned in school. Eduardo was her biggest supporter, helping with the financial and bureaucratic part, but leaving the creative part to her. The restaurant was an instant success, with glowing reviews and waiting lists of weeks. Marina hired people from the outskirts, giving them the same opportunities she had received. She created a scholarship program for young people who wanted to study culinary arts but lacked resources. She used her privileged position to make a difference, to give back everything she had received. Eduardo, inspired by Marina, began to direct more of the family businesses toward social projects, toward investments that really helped people. Together, they created a foundation that supported entrepreneurs from needy communities, offering not just money, but mentoring and structure. 1 year after the second wedding, Marina discovered she was pregnant. The news was received with explosive joy. Eduardo cried when she told him, holding her and saying he was going to be the best father he could be, that he was going to give their son or daughter everything, but mainly love and true values. Julia was one of the first they told, and her transformation was complete. She hugged Marina with tears in her eyes, saying, "You brought so much life to this family, so much joy. Thank you." When Marina was 6 months pregnant, they took a trip to her old house in the East Zone. Eduardo wanted to see where she came from, to better understand her story. Marina showed him the streets where she grew up, the market where she worked, the commute she made every day. Eduardo looked at everything with respect and admiration, understanding the strength that had been necessary for her to survive, to maintain dignity amidst so much difficulty. "You are the strongest person I know," he said, holding her hand as they walked. And I will make sure our child knows where their mother came from, the battles she faced, the incredible person she is." Marina cried, hugging him there in the street, not caring about people passing by. Because finally she had someone who saw her completely, who honored her story instead of trying to erase it. When their daughter was born, they named her Helena in honor of Marina's mother. She was a beautiful baby with her mother's eyes and her father's smile. Eduardo held her with such care, such love, that Marina felt her heart overflow. One night, with Helena sleeping in the crib beside the bed, Marina and Eduardo were lying down, talking softly. "Do you regret anything? How it all happened?" Eduardo thought for a moment. "No, because everything, even the difficult parts, brought us here, and I wouldn't change anything." "Neither would I. Even though it was scary, even though it was madness, it was the best decision I ever made." Eduardo pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Sometimes I still can't believe you said yes on that crazy day. An incredible woman like you accepting a desperate stranger's crazy request. It wasn't just the request I accepted. It was the possibility of something more, and I was right, there was something more. There was us." "There was us," Eduardo repeated, smiling, "and there always will be." Marina looked around the room at her daughter sleeping peacefully, at the man she loved beside her, at the life they built together. A life that started in such an improbable, chaotic way, but that had transformed into something beautiful, solid, real. She had entered that market years ago being just Marina, the cook who struggled to survive. And she had come out being Marina, the woman who had the courage to risk, to believe, to love. Eduardo had entered being a desperate man, trying to save an inheritance. And he had come out being a man transformed by love, by partnership, by the discovery that there was more to life than obligations and business. Together they had faced judgments, prejudices, obstacles that seemed insurmountable. They had overcome differences of class, of upbringing, of worlds, and they had proven that true love knows no borders, respects no social conventions, cares not where you come from, but who you are. Their story was improbable. It was almost impossible, but it was real, authentic, and that was what mattered. Marina closed her eyes, nestled in Eduardo's arms, listening to her daughter's soft breathing, feeling the peace of being exactly where she should be. And for the first time in many years, she felt she was complete. Not because she had money, not because she lived in a mansion, not because of the expensive clothes or opportunities, but because she had love, she had a family, she had a purpose. She had someone who saw her, who understood her, who loved her exactly as she was. And that was more valuable than any inheritance, than any fortune. And in that moment of peace and fulfillment, Marina knew her journey had been worth every second, every fear, every tear, every challenge, because it all led to that family, to that love, to that life she never dared dream of, but that now was completely hers. "I love you," she whispered in the darkness. "I love you more," Eduardo replied, as he always did. The following years were ones of construction and growth. Helena grew fast and curious, with her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. At 3 years old, she already spent hours in the kitchen with Marina, helping to make cakes and cookies. Marina and Eduardo made a point of raising their daughter with her feet on the ground, showing that they had privileges but also responsibilities. Marina's restaurant became a reference in São Paulo, mentioned in gastronomic guides, winning awards. But more important than the commercial success was the social impact. Marina employed dozens of people from needy communities, changing lives. Several of the scholarship students she supported had already graduated and opened their own businesses, creating a network of opportunities that expanded. Eduardo had completely transformed the family business. It remained profitable, but now with a focus on sustainability and social impact. They built quality low-income housing, invested in education, supported small entrepreneurs. The Verissimo family had ceased to be just a name associated with wealth and had become a reference in social responsibility. Julia, surprisingly, had become a great ally of Marina. She worked voluntarily at the foundation they had created, using her high society contacts to raise resources and support. She had grandchildren to spoil, a renewed purpose, and for the first time in years, she seemed genuinely happy. Ricardo, on the other hand, sank into his own bitterness. After losing the action against Eduardo, he was gradually sidelined from the family businesses due to increasingly erratic behavior. The last news was that he lived abroad, far from everyone. On a Sunday morning, Marina and Eduardo were in the garden watching Helena play. The girl ran after butterflies, laughing out loud, so free and happy. Marina felt her heart tighten with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Eduardo asked, wrapping his arm around her. "About how strange life is, about how everything changed since that day at the market." Eduardo smiled. "Best day of my life, even being the most desperate one too." "Do you know what's funny?" Marina said, resting her head on his shoulder. "At that time I thought happiness was just having enough money not to worry about bills. But now I know that happiness is this. It's you, it's Helena, it's having a purpose. Money is just a tool. What matters is what we do with it, with whom we share it." "You taught me that," Eduardo said, kissing the top of her head. "Before you, I was just a businessman fulfilling obligations. You showed me how to live for real, how to use what I have to make a difference." Helena ran to them at that moment, throwing herself into Eduardo's lap with a crystal-clear laugh. "Daddy, I caught a butterfly, but I let it go because Mommy said they need to be free." Eduardo hugged his daughter tightly. "Your mother is always right." Marina smiled, looking at them. Her family, her life. Everything she never knew she wanted, everything she never dared dream of. Later that day, after putting Helena to sleep, Marina and Eduardo were in the office. He was working on some documents. She was reading a book about new culinary techniques. It was a common, everyday moment, but filled with peace and contentment. "Marina," Eduardo said suddenly, making her look up, "remember when I made you that crazy proposal? 1 year pretending to be my wife? How could I forget? And what if I told you that even back then, without admitting it, I knew I wasn't going to be able to let you go, that something inside me already knew you were the right person?" Marina closed the book, touched. "And what if I told you that part of me also knew? That as scary as it was, something told me to trust you, to take that leap of faith?" Eduardo stood up, went to her, kneeling beside the chair as he had done in the true marriage proposal. "Thank you for having trusted, for having taken that leap of faith with me. Thank you for having seen me, for having seen beyond the cook's uniform, beyond the humble origin, for having seen Marina." They kissed gently, a kiss full of years of love, of partnership, of complicity. That night, lying in bed, Eduardo said, "Do you know what I love most about you?" "What?" "Your strength, the way you never lost your essence, no matter how much circumstances changed. You continue being that woman who works hard, who cares about others, who fights for those who have no voice. Money didn't change you. Social position didn't change you. You continue being you." Marina felt tears burn. "And do you know what I love most about you? That you let me be me, that you never tried to transform me into something I'm not, that you value where I came from instead of trying to erase it." "Because where you came from is part of what makes you incredible." They stayed in silence, embraced, listening to the baby monitor, where they could hear Helena's quiet breathing. "Sometimes I wonder," Marina said softly, "what my life would be like if I had said no that day. And I'm grateful I never need to find out, because this life with you, with Helena, with everything we built, is more than I ever imagined possible." Weeks later, Marina organized a special dinner at the restaurant. She invited all the people who were part of their journey: Donna Benedita, Marcos, Donna Lourdes, the scholarship students she supported and who now had their own businesses, Julia, true friends they made over the years, even some of Marina's old friends from the East Zone with whom she kept in touch. When everyone was gathered, Marina stood up with a glass in her hand. Eduardo was beside her, holding Helena in his lap. "I want to thank all of you," she began, her voice emotional. "Each person here was part of my transformation. Some were there when I was just Marina, the cook who struggled to survive. Others met me already as Marina Verissimo, but accepted me nonetheless. Everyone taught me something about courage, about love, about never giving up on who we are." She looked at Eduardo. "Especially you, who saw something in me that even I didn't see, who gave me a chance when no one else would, who loved me not despite my origins, but including them." Then she looked at Julia. "And you who learned to accept me and gave me the gift of your trust and love, who proved that it's never too late to change, to open one's heart. Finally, she looked at Helena. "And you, my little one, who showed me that the true legacy we leave is not money or possessions, but values and love." There were cheers, tears, hugs. That night was marked as a celebration not only of material achievements, but of a journey of transformation, of a love that defied conventions, of two people from different worlds who found each other and built something beautiful together. Years continued to pass. Helena grew strong and conscious, studying not only in the best schools, but also learning about social responsibility from her parents. Marina opened a second restaurant, then a third, each employing people from needy communities, each with a training program. Eduardo passed the presidency of the company to a trusted manager, preferring to dedicate more time to the foundation and the family. Priorities had changed. Success was no longer measured in profits, but in lives transformed, in families helped, in opportunities created. One night, almost 10 years after that fateful day at the market, Marina and Eduardo were in the garden looking at the stars. Helena was sleeping inside, now 9 years old. Eduardo's hair was grayer, some wrinkles marked both their faces. But the love between them had only grown. "You know what I realized?" Marina said. "Our story could be a fairy tale. A poor woman marries a rich prince, but it's not. It's better than a fairy tale." "How so?" "Because in fairy tales, the happy ending is the wedding. For us, the wedding was just the beginning. The true happy ending was everything we built afterward, the family, the purpose, the impact we have. That is more magical than any fairy tale." Eduardo squeezed her hand. "You're right. And you know the best part? We are still writing our story. There are still so many chapters ahead. And I'll want to live everyone by your side. And I by yours." They looked toward the house, at the illuminated windows, at the life they built inside those walls. A life that had begun with a desperate agreement, with a necessary lie, but that had transformed into the purest truth they ever knew. Marina thought of the woman she was on that day at the market, alone, tired, without hope that life could be different. And she looked at the woman she was now, loved, fulfilled, making a difference in the world. The journey had been difficult, full of obstacles and judgments. But every challenge had strengthened her, every victory had transformed her. Eduardo thought of the man he was, trapped in obligations, in expectations, living a life planned by others. And he looked at the man he was now, free, happy, living the life he chose. Marina hadn't just saved his inheritance, she had saved him. "I love you," Eduardo said, as he had said thousands of times before. "I love you more," Marina replied, as she always replied. And there, under the stars of São Paulo, in the garden of a mansion that no longer intimidated them, two worlds that should never have met remained completely intertwined. Not because they needed to be together by agreement or obligation, but because they chose to be, every day, again and again. And that choice, renewed at every dawn, was the true happy ending. Not a moment, but a constant decision. Not a destination, but a path trodden together. The story of Marina and Eduardo wasn't about a scenery that changed from the outskirts to a mansion. It was about a heart that opened to love. It was about the courage to take a leap of faith. It was about two lonely people who found a home in each other. And they lived happily, not because it was easy, but because they fought every day for that happiness, for that love, for that family. Because they knew that the best stories are not those where everything is perfect, but those where, despite the imperfections, there is true love, mutual respect, and a will to grow together. And that was the best story of all. A love story that had begun with a desperate yes and continued with a passionate yes, that had begun with a temporary agreement and had become an eternal commitment. And while the stars shone above, while the city slept around them, while their daughter dreamed inside the house, Marina and Eduardo remained there, hands intertwined, hearts united, knowing they had